Wonderful.
Morning, Michael.
Good morning. Good morning. Good Shabbos, Kristen
Good,
and
good
Steve.
Shabbos. Hey, I got
morning.
an
Good
answer
Shabbos.
for you for a question you had.
What?
I
Shabbos.
chatted with Diane Young, who
Yeah.
you saw on the Tisha B'Av, and I guess she does a lot of services with the Gloucester Synagogue.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, should be doing it with Alex.
Rabbi Lewis's father died last week, or this week, actually. Yeah. Well, Diane's certainly an interesting person, and I miss her. I used to see her around a lot. I used to do walks with her. She led a walking group. Hi, Janet.
Hello, Michael. Good to see you.
Good. And Bonnie, hello.
Hey, hi, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
No
Oh,
walk
Janet.
this morning,
Hello.
Janet.
What'd you say?
No walk
Don't walk
this
today.
No,
I'm very
No, right?
cozy inside.
get used to it. You're looking at least 48 hours.
Yes.
Not here.
No, it's going to miss you?
Apparently, it's supposed to stop by mid-afternoon.
And all you have is rain, right? By the time it stops raining there, think of us, we will just be beginning with the snow.
No.
Yeah.
5 o'clock.
Well, the good news is that all this rain we've had for the last, I don't know, 12 hours is not snow.
That's
Yes,
true, but did you
indeed.
hear the rate of snowfall is going to be some incredible amount, an inch
I heard
an
some
hour?
place, I
Yeah.
heard some places 2 inches an hour in
Yeah.
like Worcester.
Yeah, I'm still glad we live on the coast, even though I was driving up to Janny's cottage just to check on the heat this morning, because that's where I'm going to be staying when my renovation project starts.
Oh,
And the road to Salisbury, between Newburyport and Salisbury, that's Route 1.
yeah.
It's not drainage. They have overflow on both sides
Wow.
from the marshes there. Yeah.
It's a high tide too.
Yeah,
and
I could not go 45 miles an hour because it felt dangerous to be sliding in
Yeah.
deep water, coming up over the tires.
Where was that, Bonnie?
Salisbury, on the way to Salisbury, you go over the Gillis Bridge from Newburyport to
Yeah, so you
Salisbury.
were on
And it
Beach
was-
Road?
No, Route 1.
Before there, Route 1, Lafayette Street, around
Oh.
David's Fish Market, just going up that far. There are
Right.
marshes on 2 sides, and you can see where there are I always forget what that's called. They use it during construction usually, but they're big rolls of hay inside plastic, and they use them as buffers to try to keep the water, the low-lying water anyway, out of the street. But I'd say it's coming halfway across each side of the street. So you don't want to go water gliding through there. You want to slow
Yeah.
down.
Right, yeah.
And that's just the high tide water, as Michael says. So it doesn't look good.
Yeah, the last storm along the Merrimack River on Pleasant Valley Road, like to our house, I saw it wasn't over the road, but it came pretty close. It might have been over the road towards Merrimack that way, because that has flooded before and they've had to have detours.
Yeah, I don't know if they ever fixed that or not. I just stayed off that road. It's the river road along, the road along the river to Merrimack.
Right, so Bartlett's Reach, but then when you get to the another point, yes, it's closed, and you have to jog up Skunk Road and come across.
Yeah, so I
It's
just don't
not
do
open.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, that's how I get on 495, like going to Boston. I go
Sure.
that way.
Yeah.
It's quicker. Alex, are you on?
Yes, can you all
Good.
hear me?
Yeah.
Good.
I've had problems with my computer this morning. I have to think it's Comcast and the weather, but
Yeah, I'm inclined to blame the weather in terms of like maybe bad luck, but it seems to me like the volume on my computer is a me issue, not a Comcast issue.
Oh, the volume, yeah. My
But
computer's very slow.
I think I got it worked out. I hope. We'll see once we get a couple of minutes in. Everything's a little slow on a day like today. 40 and rainy is not exactly, get up and get 'em weather.
So Alex, I want to check with you. Was it toasty warm in there when you arrived this morning?
Yes, and I want to make sure that I say thank you for that, because it is toasty warm, and it was really wonderful to be able to walk in and not have to worry about, wearing an extra layer that I would shed halfway through.
Yeah,
So
so
thank
I
you,
got
Monty.
the heat on the timer there. I'm hoping, and it's just for Friday night and Saturday morning, but I'm hoping, because I left everything low on the other thermostat, that it won't have to work too hard to just heat up the front of the house. Normally I put the two in coordination, but nobody's really using the back. And if you use your office, you hit the heat pump. So let's just leave it like that, see how it goes.
Works for me. I can give you updates after just me and you, but I do really appreciate it. It was much nicer coming in this morning than it has been the last couple weeks. So
That's
thank
my
you.
pre-Hanukkah gift for you. How's that?
I love it.
Hey, Leah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I
you
lost
changed your
track
back.
I lost track of the time this morning.
Yeah. I thought you'd moved. Are you in the same spot you usually are? It looks a little
Yeah,
different.
I just don't have it oriented quite, because I ran to and just plopped my iPad down
Yeah.
on the
No,
table.
Yeah.
I think probably I just have my normally it's just all white back there, and I have a table mat that I crocheted up there.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah. Good
just
time
different.
to start reorganizing things in the house. I was
Well,
looking
I'm
around
moving
my
stuff
office.
around because I have a whole bunch of things that I made that I have to put away now.
Mhm.
So it's a little more colorful because things are draped over this and that. I make things over the course of the year, and then there's the great disbursement.
Oh, right. Yeah. Does anybody have any interesting things you're planning to do during our, well, at least those in the Northeast? I guess you're not going to be worried about being tied down to the house or apartment anywhere else, but
I'm playing with my toys. I get a week off even though we're all remote, because we my company went remote in March indefinitely, but between the last week of the year, everything closes. So, but I'll just stay home and play with my toys like I do.
Good.
Make
Meaning
more
being
things.
productive, meaning all
Make more
spinning,
things.
weaving, knitting, whatever.
Anybody want to
and-
trade for crafted goods?
For what? What do you need?
I don't know. I mean, I'm open to all suggestions.
Do you want some food? Would you eat
I can.
food? Would you like food from some? Well, I'll talk to you later. Maybe we'll do
Okay.
something. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I
CAA
think
barter
things are
economy.
building up here. I need to disperse.
All right. We'll talk tomorrow.
Okay.
I can always offer some sourdough, so baked. So
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Already baked.
Yeah. And I need ideas for what to make for the spring term.
Yeah. Kristen, do you do anything besides sourdough?
oh yeah, I bake lots of different things. I've got some good holiday breads coming up, some really thin spice cookies I make this time of year.
Moravian cookies?
No, I don't know the origin. It's a pretty well, actually, it's Dutch. It's that speculaas.
Oh, yes, I know those. Very, very thin.
Ooh, those are lovely.
They're
Yeah,
very much like the Swedish ones, but I think they're slightly thicker. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they aren't as thin as those, but I've
Yeah.
got these nice wooden molds that are kind of a pain to use, but they're really fun. They're
I love that. I've got
beautiful.
ceramic molds that I use for things.
Okay, so maybe that's more up your line, Leah.
Yeah, the Moravian ones are like very thin, like crispy ginger snaps. And they in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, was founded by Moravians. I think Salem was, and we used to live down near there, and you would every time at Christmas time they would package them in tins and sell them, and they're like so thin they're like would almost break if you're not careful just handling them, but they're really good and crunchy.
Kristen, could I have your phone number, please?
Sure. 978-578-2486.
Hi, Janny.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Morning, nice to see you all.
Good morning to you.
Morning, good morning.
Good Shabbat, everyone.
Good Shabbat.
Yeah,
Good Shabbat,
Anna and Bob.
Shabbat. Oh my God. Hi, Sharon.
Hello. Good to see Wheeler. I know you're
Hi,
behind me.
Sharon.
Hi, Janet.
Good morning to you. Good Shabbos.
Yeah, and Alex, I have said if we want to include, like warm weather goods and everything like that, I could teach a class or contribute for that, for things to give for charity and stuff.
Cool. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you. And I think with that, hearing everyone catch up and say hello and good Shabbos, I think I will put everyone on mute and we'll get started this morning. Although it's a little bit dangerous to start the morning with talk of cookies, because I can't imagine that we're not going to be driven to distraction a little bit over the course of the next hour and a half, 2 hours, especially without the prospect of kiddush waiting in the next room. But you all have the luxury of being at home. So if you need to sprint out to the kitchen and get a cookie and a cup of tea to keep you going on this rainy, chilly morning, please feel free. And I guess I could always sneak into the kitchen and see what we have left packaged up from who knows how many months ago now, but modern food doesn't go bad anyway. I see Bonnie making a face, but if we have a package of Oreos in there, they'll be good till 2028. So I'm not too worried about it. It's really nice to see you all, and thank you all for coming in early and joining us this morning. I want to begin looking forward a little bit with an eye, not surprisingly, on Hanukkah. And this idea that I hope feels especially alive for us this year of kind of, and we talk about it every year, but of bringing in light and sharing light, and how important that idea is. And it's important every year, but I think it's particularly important this year when, you know, things seem a little bit extra, not seem, things are a little bit extra dark in the world around us, and how important it is that we don't try, I'm not advocating that we try to completely shut that out or that we ignore the pain and suffering of, you know, so many people in the world, especially amidst the COVID pandemic, but that we do try to also, you know, do what we can to brighten the lives of our family, our friends, our loved ones, and even broaden that circle as much as we can over the course of the 8-day holiday, or over the course of, you know, what will be both literally and metaphorically a pretty long and dark winter. And so really, you know, taking this opportunity before we kind of get into that mindset of embracing that darkness too much, or hibernating, or however we want to think about it, and think about kind of what is our plan to embrace light in these times, and to really spread light. So with that being said, I'd like to begin get us going this morning with a poem by a Bengali poet who lived around the turn of the 20th century and into the middle of the 20th century. And I hope I don't butcher his name too badly if anyone has heard of him, but the name is Rabindranath Tagore, and this is called Sally Crabtree Chooses Light. Light, my light, the world-filling light, the eye-kissing light, heart-sweetening light. Ah, the light dances, my darling, at the center of my life. The light strikes, my darling, the chords of my love. The sky opens, the wind runs wild, laughter passes over the earth. The butterflies spread their sails on the sea of light. Lilies and jasmines surge up on the crest of the waves of light. The light is shattered into gold on every cloud, my darling, and it scatters gems in profusion. Mirth spreads from leaf to leaf, my darling, and gladness without measure. The heavens river has drowned its banks, and the flood of joy is abroad. And so just as we enter into this time of Hanukkah, and I see a couple of you have your eyes closed, and, you know, especially on this kind of dark, dreary morning, thinking about bringing light into, as I said, into our lives and into the lives of the people we care about, and really trying to kind of diffuse that as far and wide as possible. And with that, we will do our best to bring light into our morning through our Shabbat morning services. And I am going to put the Ma Tovu up on the screen, and let's all begin together. Ma Tovu Ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma Tovu Ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael. And we'll continue with Birchot HaShachar. It's on page 65 if anyone has a book at home, and I invite you to rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan savivina leflim ben yom uven laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Matir Asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Zokef Kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasali kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaber. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer shel bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter shel b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein li'ayif koach. Praised are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, removing sleep from my eyes and slumber from my eyelids. And if you are standing, you may be seated. We'll continue with the concluding paragraph of the Psalm for Shabbat as we sing Tzadik Hatamar together. Tzadik Hatamar yifrach ke'erez balvanon yizke shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu. Odinuvun beseva deshenim verananim yiyu lehagid ki ashar Adonai tzuri velo avlatavo. And we'll continue on page 82 with Mourner's Kaddish. I'll give everyone the opportunity to unmute if anyone wants to join me for the Kaddish. Yit Gadal, V'yit Gadash, Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
Be'alma, Divrach
Divrach
Yurtei,
Yurtei,
Ve'amlich Malchutei,
Malchutei,
V'chayechon,
Mechon,
V'chayei
Vayei
B'chol
B'chol
Israel,
Israel,
Ba'agala,
V'Zivim
V'Zivim, Amen.
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 Yehi
Shmei
Rabba
Rabba
Levarach,
Levarach,
Olam,
Olam,
Omaya.
Omei, Omaya.
Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitomam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitalem, V'yishalal, Shmei V'yishta, V'yishu, Ve'ela, Min Kol Birchata, V'shirata, Tushchata, V'nechamata, Kamiran Be'alma, V'yishu. Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shlom Rabba, Mishmaya, V'chaim Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom Mimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel Imru Amen.
Amen.
And we're all going to go back on mute, and we will continue on the next page with Baruch She'amar. Baruch She'amar v'haya ha'olam Baruch Hu. Baruch Oseh Bereshit, Baruch Omer Ve'oseh, Baruch Gozer Umekayem, Baruch Merachem Al Haaretz, Baruch Merachem Al Habriot, Baruch Meshalem Sachar Tov Lireav. Baruch Elad Kayam Lanetzach, Baruch Podeh Umatzil, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Shemo. Praised are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe. Compassionate creator, extolled by your people, glorified by your faithful servants. We laud you with the psalms of your servant David. We extol you in song. We celebrate your fame and melody. We proclaim you sovereign, singular, eternal God. Praised are you, Adonai, sovereign, magnified with songs of praise. And if you are standing, you may be seated. We will continue on with the Ashrei. I don't know. I know Sharon did it responsibly with me last week. I don't know if anyone else wants to volunteer to get their voice heard with the Ashrei this week. Otherwise, I see Mike. All right, let's hear from Mike, if that's okay with you, Sharon. Wonderful. All right. Mike, if you want to unmute yourself, and do you want to do the first line or the second line?
Doesn't matter.
All right. Why don't you take the first line? I'm happy to be in the B-roll a little bit.
Okay. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, Od Yaluka Selah.
Ashreyam Shekachalo, Ashreyam Shadonai Elohav.
Tehillah David. Vavrachoshim Kol Olam Va'ed.
Bechol Yom Avarcheka, Valashimcha Leolam Va'ed.
Gadol Adonai U'Malol Me'od, V'ligvulato Ein Heker.
Dor L'dor Shabach Masecha, Gvurotecha Yagidu.
Hadar Kavod Hodecha, V'divrei Niflotecha Asecha.
Bezuz Noratecha Yomeru, Gdulatcha Asaprena.
Zecher Rav Tuvcha Yabiu, V'tzidkacha Yiranenu.
Fanun Rachum Adonai, Erech Apayim Ugdal Chased.
Tov Adonai Lakol, V'rachamav Al Kol Masav.
Yoducha Adonai Kol Masecha, V'chasidecha Yevarchucha.
Kavod Malchuto Yomeru, Uvarato Yadaberu.
Leo Dialif Ne'adam Grotav, Uvlod Hadar Malchuto.
Malchutecha Malchut Kol Olamim, Umemshaltecha Bekol Dor V'dor.
No Mech Adonai L'chol Anoflim, V'zokef L'chol Akfufim.
Einei Kol Elecho Yisaberu, V'ato Noten Lohem Et Aklam Bito.
Poteach Et Yadecha, U'maspia L'chol Chai Ratzon.
Tzadik Adonai B'chol Dorocha, V'chasid B'chol Masav.
Karov Adonai L'chol Karav, L'chol Asher Yikaruhu Be'emet.
Ritzon Yureav Yaseh, V'yet Shavotam Yishma V'yoshim.
Shomer Adonai Kol Avav, V'kol Rishim Yashmid.
Tehillah Adonai Yedaber Pi, V'vorei Kol Basar Shem Kodsho L'Olam Va'ed.
V'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata v'ad olam. Hallelujah. Thank you, Mike, and Yasher Koach. And we will continue a couple pages ahead with Psalm 150, the Hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 El Bikocho. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Birki Auzo. Hallelujah, 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 Bigvurotav. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Kerov Gudlo. Hallelujah, 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 Beteka Shofar. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Benevel Vechinor. Hallelujah, 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 Betof Umachol. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Beminim Ve'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 Betil Tele Shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Betil Tele Trua. Kohan Shama Tehalelia, Tehalelia, Hallelujah. Kohan Shama Tehalelia, Hallelujah. Kol hanshama tehalel ya hallelujah. And we continue towards the top of page 102 with the beginning of Az Yashir. If you would like, please rise. Az Yashir Moshe uvenei Yisrael et hashira hazot ladonai vayomru leimor Ashira ladonai ki ga sus verachvo rama vayam Ozi vezimratya vayehi li lishua ze'eli ve'anvehu Elohei aviv aromenhu. We continue in the middle of the next page. Adonai imloch leolam va'ed Adonai imloch leolam va'ed Ki Adonai melucha Moshe b'goyim v'alu Moshim b'artzion shpodet harisav v'aytal Adonai hamelucha v'haya Adonai lamelech al kol haaretz Vayom hawi Adonai echad u'shemo echad. And we're going to skip forward a couple pages and continue with Ha'el b'tatzumot in the middle of the page, which will lead us into Yishtabach, V'chatzi Kadesh, and Baruch Hu. Ha'el b'tatzumot uzecha, Hagadol b'chvod shemecha, Hagibor lanetzach, V'nora v'noratecha, Hamelech hayoshev, Al kisei ram v'nisa, Shochen ad marom v'kadosh shemo, V'chatu ranim tzadikim b'Adonai, Le'yishrim navatila, Befi sharim titalal, Udivrei tzadikim titbarach, uvilshon chasdim titromam, uvekerev kedoshim titkadash, uvemakalot rivot amcha beit Yisrael. B'nai parshim chamokin b'chol dar vador. Shekein chovat kodesh milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu le'odot la'alel shabech lefaer l'romeim lehader l'rech le'okales Al kol direi shiro v'tishbachot David ben Yishai avdecha meshichecha Yishtabach shimcha la'ad malkeinu Ha'el melech hagdol v'kadosh b'shamayim v'aretz Ki lachana Adonai Eloheinu v'Evoteinu shir shracha halel v'zimra Oz mem shal hanetzach b'lo gvura tila tiferek kedusha u'malchut Brachot eldot me'atav yad olam baruch atah Adonai el melech gadol batishbachot el odot Adonai niflot habocher b'shrei zimra melech elchei ha'olamim. And I invite you all to unmute to respond to the Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei
Amen.
Almighty Brachirutei v'amlich malchutei b'chayechon v'emechon uchay l'chol Beit Yisrael b'agalav b'zman kariv v'imru
Amen.
Ishmei Rabbo Mevorach Le'olam Hamayah.
Yitbarach v'yitgadash V'far v'tramam v'naseh v'tadar v'tolev tolal shmei d'kudesha b'richu Eila mikol b'chata v'shirata tushvata v'nechamata v'amiram be'alma v'imru
Amen.
Baruchu et Adonai hamevorach
Baruch
Mevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, creating light and fashioning darkness, ordaining the order of all creation. And letting that blessing sink in a little bit as we continue to think about that interplay and balance of light and dark in our lives. We'll continue at the bottom of the page, with Ein Kirkecha, which will lead us into El Adon. Ein Kirkecha Adonai Eloheinu b'olam hazeh, ve'im zlatacha malkeinu l'chayei ha'olam haba. Efes biltacha golenu mot hamashiach, v'en doma lecha moshienu l'tchiat hametim. El Adon al kol hamasim baruch umvorach befi kol neshama gadlo v'tuvo male olam da'at utfuna sovevimoto hamit el chayot hakodesh v'nehedar bechavod al hamerkava zechut umishor lifnei chiso chesed rachamim lifnei kvodo tovim meorot shebara Eloheinu yitzaram beda'at bevina ufaskel koach ugvura natan bahem liot moshlim bekerev tevel Meleim ziv umfikim nogana zivam bechol haolam semechim betzeitam vesasim bevawam osim b'yem haritzon konam pe'er v'chavod notnim lishmot tzala verina lezecher malchuto kara lashemesh vayizrach or ra'a vehikin surat halvana shevach notnim lo kol tzeva maron tiferet ugedula srafim ve'ofanim v'chayot hakodesh ay nay nay ay nay 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 anay anay ay nay 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 anay anay ay nay 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 anay nay 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 ay nay nay nay. And we're going to skip ahead a couple pages to the bottom of page 110, and once again revisit the light as we sing Or Chadash together. Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir. Veniske kulanu mehera leoro. Veniske kulanu mehera leoro. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hameorot. And please join me in reading the English on page 111. Deep is your love for us, Adonai, our God, boundless your tender compassion. Avinu Malkeinu, you taught our ancestors life-giving laws. They trusted in you. For their sake, graciously teach us. Our Maker, merciful provider, show us mercy, grant us discernment and understanding. Then will we study your Torah, heed its words, teach its precepts, and follow its instruction, lovingly fulfilling all its teachings. Open our eyes to your Torah, help our hearts cleave to your mitzvot, unite all our thoughts to love and revere you. Then we will never be brought to shame, for we trust in your awesome holiness and will delight in your deliverance. Bring us safely from the four corners of the earth and lead us in dignity to our holy land. For you are the source of deliverance. You have called us from all peoples and tongues, constantly drawing us near to you, that we may lovingly offer you praise, proclaiming your oneness. Praised are you, Adonai, who loves the people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'amo Yisrael, b'yahava. And I invite anyone to unmute and join me in the Shema and the Yahava. Shema
Yisrael Adonai
Yeah.
Yisrael Elohecha b'chol
levavecha,
levavecha
v'chol
v'chol
nafshecha,
nafshecha
v'chol
v'chol
meodecha,
meodecha
v'hoyu hadarim
v'hayu
ha'ele asher
harim
anochi
ha'ele
v'hayom
asher Elohim
Vishinantam
etzacha yom
levanecha,
levavecha
v'dibartam
Vishinantam levanecha v'dibartam V'shitecha b'mitzecha uvlecha b'derech v'lecha uvkumecha v'tam lios ayodecha v'totefos b'neidecha
והיה אם שמוע תשמעו מצוותיי אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיכם ולעבדו בכל לבבכם ובכל נפשכם ונתתי את ארצכם בתורה מקוש ואספת דגנך ותירושך ויצריך ונתתי עשב בשדך לבהמתך ואכלת ושבעת הישמרו לכם פן יפתה לבבכם וסרתם ועברתם אלוהים אחרים והשתחוויתם להם וחרף אדוני בכם ויצר את השמיים לא יהיה מטר והאדמה לא תיתן את גבולה ועברתם מהרה מעל הארץ הטובה אשר אדוני נותן לכם ושמתם את דבריי אלה על לבבכם ועל נפשכם וקשרתם אותם לאות על ידכם והיו תותפות בין עיניכם לימדתם אותם את פניכם לדבר בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען ירבו ימיכם מימי בניכם על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיכם לתת להם כימי השמיים על הארץ ויאמר אדוני משה לאמור דבר על בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף ותל תכלת והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תשובו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. And we'll turn the page to page 114. In just a minute, we'll continue with Michamocha. After that, we'll begin the Amidah together. We'll come unmuted for the Kedusha, and then we'll take a couple minutes for silent prayer, reflection, and meditation. Tehillah Le'Elyon Baruch Hu Barach Moshe Miriam Uvnei Yisrael Lechanu Shirah B'simcha Rabba V'amru Chulam Michamocha Ba'elim Adonai Mikamocha Nedar B'Kodesh Nora Tehilot Osei Felech Shirah Chadashah Shivkugulim Shimcha Svat Hayam Yachad Kulam Hodu V'imlichu V'ameru Adonai Imloch Le'olam Va'ed Tzur Yisrael Kuma Be'ezrat Yisrael Uvdechinu Becha Yehuda v'Yisrael Go Aleinu Adonai Tzvot Shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch Atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Golei Bneihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer Foked U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Abraham, Ufoked Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayim Eitim Atarav Le'Oshia, Mashiv HaRuach, Umorid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayim Eitim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Micha Mocha Ba'al Givurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechaye, Umatmiach Yeshua, V'nemanat Halachayot Meitim, Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei HaMeitim.
Amen. Nekadesh Hashem Kol B'Olam, Kashem Shematishimoto B'Shnei Morom, Hakatu Vayad V'Yecha V'Kol Razeh Zeh V'Yomar.
Nekadesh Kashem Shematishimoto B'Shnei Morom, Kaka. Al Yad Nevi'echa V'Karazel Ze'yamar.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzavot, Elohe Haaretz Kevodo. Oz B'Kol Rash Gadol, Adir V'Chazot Mashmim Kol, Mitnasim L'Masarafim, L'Matam Baruch Yomeru.
Az B'Kol Ra'ash Gadol, Adir V'Chazak Mashmim Kol, Az B'Kol Ra'ash Gadol, Adir V'Chazak Mashmim Kol, Mitnasim Le'umatzarafim, Mitnasim Le'umatzarafim, Le'umatam Baruch Yomeru.
Baruch Adonai Mimkomo. Makom Alkeinu Tofia V'Timloch Aleinu. Ki Mechakim Anachnu Lo K'motzai Timloch B'Tzion. V'Karov Yomeinu L'Lambo Et Yishkon. Tikadal V'Tikadash B'Tok Yerushalayim Yircha V'Dor V'Dor Netzach Yitzchaki.
Mimkom Chamakenu Tofia V'Timloch Aleinu Ki Mechakim Anachnu Lach. Matai Timloch B'Tzion. V'Karav B'Yameinu Le'olam V'Tishkon. Titkadal V'Titkadash B'Tok Yerushalayim Yircha. Ledor V'Ador Netzachim. Ayde David Mashiach Tzidkecha.
Yimloch Ledor
Hallelujah. Elohayich Tzion, Ledor Vador, Hallelujah. Ledor Vador, Nagid Galecha, L'netzach Tzachim Kedushatcha, Nakdish, V'shivchacha, Eloheinu Pinoi Mushal Med, Ki Melech Gadol, V'kadosh Ata, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
For Michael? No, I lost the voice. Everything. Oh, yeah. I lost him. Wait. No, I lost the connection.
Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru imru amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'meru amen. And we will continue with the full Kaddish. I invite anyone who would like to unmute themselves to participate responsibly in the Kaddish. Yikadal v'yikadash shmei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'alma divrach pirtei, ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yemnechon u'chay l'chol Beit Yisrael. Agala v'zman kariv v'meru.
Amen.
Hey, Shmei
Shmei
Rabba
Rabba
Mevorach,
Mevorach,
Olam
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 Hayom
Maya
Yisbarach.
Barak Shabbat, Yitbar Trom Shmei, Yikadal V'chal Shmei D'Kudesha,
Brichu.
Elam Mikol Berchata V'Shiratat, Chata V'Nechamata, Damiran Be'alma V'meru.
Amen.
Yitkabel Tzorot Hahon, D'Chol Beit Yisrael, Kadam V'Hom D'Vishmaya V'meru.
Amen.
Yeshlam Rab Min Shemaya, V'Chaim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'meru.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu
Aseh shalom b'ramav v'yaseh
Yaseh
shalom
Aleinu
aleinu
V'Al Kol
v'yakol Yisrael
Yisrael, V'Al Kol
v'yimeru.
Yisrael V'meru. Amen. And we're all going to go back on mute. Barry Pastor, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and we will turn our attention to the Torah service and work towards opening the Ark. I'll put it back up on the screen. Sorry, just 1 second, Barry. It should be up there, and we are ready whenever you are.
Ein komocha b'elim Adonai v'ein kemasecha malchusecha malchus kol olamim umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam v'hed. Adonai oz li'amo yitain. Adonai yivorech es hamo v'shalom. Avorachamim. Eitiv avertzon koet Zion. Tivnei chomos Yerushalayim. Ki v'chol levat botochnu. Melech Elrom v'nisa. Adon olamim. Vayehi ben Aharon, Vayomer Moshe, Kumo Adonai, V'yafutzu oivecha, V'yanusu misanecha mipanecha, Ki mitzion tetzei Sorah. Ki mitzion tetzei Sorah, u'devar Adonai miYerushalayim. Baruch shenasan Torah Torah. Baruch shenasan Torah Torah. Li'amo Yisrael b'hikdusha so.
Thank you so much, Barry. Anyone who is standing may be seated, and we will transition into the Torah service. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Once again, so nice to see you all, and thank you for joining us this morning. This morning we'll be reading from Parshat Vayishlach, and there are lots of very famous parts of this parsha, and lots of different themes we could explore really from beginning to end. The two things that I want to focus on now, and one of them we'll revisit a little bit at the end of our reading, is kind of whether we see or how we see actual humanity in the characters of our narrative, how we kind of treat Jacob and Rachel and their greater family as human beings, and look for models of behavior or models of behavior to avoid in their actions as humans. And the other, and this is pretty closely tied to it, is how these characters deal with conflict, because this is a parsha that is filled with conflict. I think most famously, well, it's almost like a three-way tie, right? Because you have this impending conflict between Jacob and his brother Esau, which starts out the parsha. There's this tension that you could kind of cut with a knife in terms of both of them kind of preparing their camps and their arms for this standoff that could either go really well or really poorly. And they both seem to be, preparing almost for an apocalypse that thankfully ends with a hug and a kiss. And so there's that little bit of, not little bit, there's that kind of preparation for conflict. We also, and in my mind, this is probably the most famous part of the parsha, is we have Jacob's conflict or struggle with the angel, right? As Jacob is preparing to meet Esau face to face, he encounters this kind of undefined being who we recognize as a divine being, and they wrestle throughout the night. And they pretty much wrestle to a stalemate until morning comes, and this angel or man of God or divine being needs to leave. Maybe he's a vampire of some sort, because it seems like if the sun shines on him, that will cause serious problems. And Jacob won't let him go without exacting some kind of reward for his night-long struggle. And that is, of course, when Jacob's name is changed to Israel, highlighting, one who wrestles with God. And in terms of like connecting this to the human character of Jacob and to our own experience as, Jewish humans, wrestling with God is something that will follow Jacob and the people for all time. I think that's something we can all pretty deeply identify with. And as I mentioned, after this struggle, we do find the resolution of the conflict between Jacob and Esau, which is, at this moment where it seems like they could either go towards utter destruction, they wind up kind of looking in each other's eyes and remembering that they're brothers. And they really do kind of hug and kiss, and it's not quite that clean of a resolution, because we can see that Jacob really never trusts his brother. And they never get, and we'll revisit this in the Haftarah, because the historic understanding of the relationship between Jacob and Esau is really one that's irreparable, right? It's one where they will always be at each other's throats. And so we really don't, unfortunately, see a full resolution of that. And then we move on to the story, which will really highlight our reading this morning, which is the sorry, I'm looking for a word, the abduction, that was the word I couldn't think of, sorry. We move on to the abduction and the rape of Jacob's daughter, Dinah, by the local Shem and his father, Hamor. And it's a kind of standalone, disturbing passage, which we will read this morning and talk about a little bit more at length after the Torah reading this morning. And again, we see how people deal with conflict. And in this case, we see Jacob's sons, Jacob really complicit with his sons, Shimon and Levi, turning to trickery, and in payback for this tragedy that is visited upon their daughter and their sister Dinah. They kind of make a false deal with this tribe of Shem and his father, saying that if they circumcise themselves, they'll kind of be able to form a common bond, as it were, and intermarry and kind of build tribal ties. But that is all pretty much a ruse, because once the men all circumcise themselves, Shimon and Levi sneak in on the third day, when really everyone is kind of at the low point of their recovery, and they kill all the men and wind up raiding the camp for human booty and for loot and all that. And so we see this different approach, whereas when Jacob is heading towards direct conflict with Esau, he kind of has a three-pronged approach of preparation and prayer and military, and asking for, trying to invoke sympathy on his brother's behalf by highlighting all his children and his wives, and invoking God, and also preparing militarily. And here we see Shimon and Levi really acting kind of more as Jacob's sons and resorting to trickery, because as we've discussed, trickery is something that dogs Jacob throughout his life. And just a couple other things that are worth highlighting in this parsha is, of course, we have Rachel's death in the birth of Benjamin, and really for all the kind of strife and hard work that Jacob undertook to win her hand, and for all the family conflict between her and Leah, her death is kind of just skimmed over, more or less. It's really just, she has trouble in childbirth and she passes away. We don't see any of kind of like the prolonged mourning or sadness that we would expect. And lastly, in terms of family conflict, there's a very strange, well, it's not that strange if you look into like power dynamics of, tribal families thousands of years ago. But after Rachel's death, Reuben, Jacob's oldest son, actually sleeps with his stepmother Bilhah, as kind of, you know, one of the things that we'll certainly get into a little bit more, both through the story of Joseph and ultimately, you know, through the rest of the 5 books, as these tribes kind of develop their own identities, is the power struggle between these 12 brothers, and how it really kind of, it shows much differently than it does between Abraham's children and Isaac's children, when there's only 2 of them and there's a kind of very clear one gets accepted and the other gets pushed to the periphery or out of the picture completely. And so the way these power struggles develop, I think is a really, you know, really interesting to keep track of. So those are all some things to keep in your minds as we read through this morning's Parshat Vayishlach. I know that Anna and Ed both have Yortzeit, so I will pause, you know, partway through to say El Male for Anna's mom and Ed's dad, if I think I have that right. Yeah, so we'll pause for that. As always, you know, we'll pause if anyone comes across anything in the text that they want to bring to our attention. And before we turn to the Torah reading, just, you know, if anyone has any thoughts on this parsha coming in, or if anything I said, you know, put the little light bulb up before we switch over. I see, Mike, is that a hand? Yeah, unmute yourself.
Yeah. So a couple of things. I'll deal with the Reuben thing first, and at the risk of annoying Sharon, I would say maybe she's not his stepmother because she was just the concubine of his father or something like that. So I'll just leave that there, because I don't think that there was ever a formal marriage between Bilhah and Jacob. The other one, and that's just a minor thought that popped in my head when you said it, but the other thing about the rape, the question is it rape? There was a sex or whatever between, or we'll have to look at it, the word, when it comes up in the portion when you read it. But there was a thought that rape might be too hard a word to describe the relationship between Shechem, I think that was his name, but and Dinah.
Yeah, so a couple things, and you know, I probably won't dwell too much on the Dinah story right now, because like I said, that's really where we'll begin our reading this morning. So we will be able to review the text in as much detail as you want, and see kind of what the specifics of the story are. I mean, very famously, and this is really what we'll get into after the Torah reading. Very famously, we never hear a word from Dinah. And so the different kind of perspectives on all of these events are very much up to our interpretation, because it really is left to us to fill in the blanks. As far as Jacob's kind of relationships, or however you want to define them, with the 2 concubines, you know, you can very much read in, without digging too far down, into kind of both perspectives on that. Like there is kind of the opinion that they are so well established as his partners, and that even part of the reason this conflict happens, there's a midrash that says that basically once Rachel died, Bilhah became his primary kind of consort or wife, or however you want to put a label on it, for lack of a better term. And so, you know, that part of the reason Reuben does this is because he sees his own mother skipped over, indicating that there were kind of equal power dynamics amongst all these women. And also, you know, there are traditions that it's almost kind of both in the elevation of the concubines' children to equal status as kind of tribes and progenitor and children of Jacob, that it's essentially kind of, we get to a place of common law, right? That they do all 4 of them are treated equally, even though, you know, on the other hand, we do have kind of our own even liturgical traditions that are kind of progressive and inclusive, like listing the mother's names, in the Amidah, we still leave out Bilhah and Zilpah. And I know Sharon works to rectify that a little bit by including them in the Misha Berach. And who knows where progressive liturgy will be 10 or 20 years down the line. We might be revisiting this, and it might be just the standard to say Bilhah and Zilpah every time we say Rachel and Leah. And just the last kind of footnote on this is, part of the understanding of what Reuben is doing is he is, as the oldest son, trying to kind of establish his own supremacy as a brother and essentially going after kind of a power grab in the wake of Rachel's death. And one of the ways to do that in ancient society, when men had multiple wives and multiple concubines, was specifically to kind of take one of your father's concubines. So there might be some kind of differentiation and specific kind of history and power dynamics at play in the kind of fine tuning of these relationships.
Yeah, I just said this is point of discussion. It's not like, oh, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
Except there's many points of view about this, and I just came into my mind.
Great. Anything else before we turn to the Torah reading? Wonderful. Well, I'm sure I can count on you all to think of things as we go along. And like I said, if anything comes up, just put something in the chat, and I'll do my best to take a pause and give us some time to reflect. We're going to begin this morning at the beginning of chapter 34, which, if anyone has an Eitz Chaim at home, is on page 206. And before we do that, I'm going to give everyone the chance to unmute so that we can say the blessing of La'asok B'divrei Torah together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu
melech haolam
asher
kiddushanu mitzvotav anu
Asod
divrei Torah.
Amen. Amen. Vatetze Dina bat Leah asher yalda liYaakov lirot bivnot haaretz vayar ota Shechem ben Chamor hachivi nisi haaretz vayikach ota vayishkav ota vaya'aneha Vatidbak nafsho bedina bat Yaakov vayehav et hane'ara vayedaber alev hana'ara vayomer Shechem el Chamor aviv lemor kach li et hayalda hazot leisha v'Yaakov shama ki timei et dina vito Uvanav hayu et miknehu basadeh vehecharesh Yaakov ad boam vayetze chamor avishechem el Yaakov lidaber ito uvnei Yaakov ba'u min hasadeh kishamam v'yatzevu hanashim vayichar lahem me'od ki nevala Asav Yisrael, Lishkav et bat Yaakov, v'chein lo ye'aseh, vayidaber Chamor itam lemor Shechem beni, chashka nafsho bevitchem, tenuna ota lo leisha, vitchatnu otanu, Benotechem titnu li vet benotenu tikchu lachem vitanu shevu behaaretz tieh lifnechem shevu uscharuha vehechazu ba vayomer Shechem el aviha vel acheha emtzachein be'einechem vasher tomru elai eten Harbu alai me'od moharu matan va'etana kasher tomru elai utnu li et hana'ara le'isha vayanu vnei Yaakov et Shechem v'et Chamor aviv b'mirma vayidaberu asher timei et dina achotam Vayomru alehem lo nuchal lasot hadavar hazeh latet et achotenu leish asher lo orla ki cherpahi lanu ach bezot neot lachem im tiu kamonu lihimol lachem kol zachar V'natnu et benotechem lachem vet benotechem nikach lanu v'yashavnu itchem v'hayinu la'am echad v'im lo tishmeu eleinu lehimol v'lakachnu et bitenu v'halachnu v'yitvu divreihem be'enei chamor uve'enei Shechem ben chamor V'lo echar hana'ar lasot hadavar ki chafetz bevat Yaakov vehu nichbad mikol beit aviv vayavo chamor u'Shechem beno el shar Iram vayidabru el anshe Iram lemor v'ha'anashim ha'ele shleimim heimitanu Vayeshvu va'eretz vayisachru ota beha'aretz hine rachavat yadayim lifnehem et menotam nikach lanu lenashim vet benotenu niten lahem ach bezot yeotu lanu hanashim lashevet itanu liot la'am echad Olanu kol zachar kasherhem mimolim niknehem v'kiyanam v'chol behemtem halo lanu hem ach neota lahem vayishvu itanu vayishmu el chamor vel Shechem beno kol yotzei sha'ar yiro Vayimolu kol zachar kol yotzei sha'ar yiro. And let's pause there for just a moment, both because it's good to kind of take a break in the action and reflect on what we've read so far, and because I saw a comment come in from Sharon and Jean. So the perpetrator of this rape of Dinah, and you know, Mike, if you want to, we can have, or Mike or anyone else, we can have a kind of a longer talk maybe some other time about how exactly the text presents whatever happens here. But I do read it as, you know, a pretty strong condemnation of what took place and very much kind of an act of force. And, you know, there are a lot of vagaries that could be discussed, you know, exactly what the details were, but that's how I'm going to kind of keep referring to it. So the perpetrator of that is Shechem, who is the son of Chamor. And as Sharon points out, Chamor means donkey. So we're certainly looking at a man who is not, you know, a family lineage that is not going to be really glorified by the text, right? You can take a hint there that these people are not really like cream of the crop type of a type of tribe. The other interesting thing that I was noticing just as I was reading is, you know, it describes in verse 19, it describes the youth lost no time in doing the thing, for he wanted Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most respected in his father's house. And just in thinking about these continued kind of power struggles amongst sons, amongst siblings, amongst families, you know, we always look at it, not all, we have a lot of opportunities to look at it through Abraham and Sarah's children, through Isaac and Rebekah's children, through Jacob and, you know, his 4 wives and all his children. We see these kind of brotherly struggles and interfamily struggles. And it's interesting to have the text lay out that, like, yeah, this is something that is not unique actually to, you know, the Israelite tribes. This is something that is happening at the time, really everyone. No one is very good at kind of, it seems, in treating their children equally. Everyone has a favorite and kind of elevates the status and the desires of that favorite in their own way. And, you know, seemingly Hamor and Shem think that they're leading their tribe in the right direction, and it proves to be their downfall. This is what drives their entire kind of camp towards death at the hands of Jacob's sons. So it's interesting just to think of those dynamics that we read about in our own, you know, forefathers and foremothers' families into the general context of their times as well. And we'll pause here for a second. And oh yeah, Joel, did you want to say something?
I'll wait till after the El Rachamim.
All right, yeah. So we'll move on to including a couple El Males for Anna's mom and Ed's dad. And do you guys have a preference who we start with?
You can start with him.
All right. So we'll start with Ed's dad. El Male Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei Ashchina B'Ma'alot Kedoshim Uterim Kezor HaKiyam Asirim Et Nishmat Yisrael Ben Gershon Shalach Le'olamo Bavur Shenachnu Mitpalim Bad Hashkarat Nishmato Began Eden Temenuchato Lachin Bal Rachamim Yasir B'Seter Knafav Le'olamim V'yitzor V'yitzorachim Nishmato Adonai Nachlato V'yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'nomar Amen. Ed, you want to share anything?
Yes, you're unmuted, Anna.
Yeah, I'm unmuted, you right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
My father was a very kind man. The most important thing for him was his family and especially his children. He worked very hard to provide for them and make their lives better. In countries where religion was forbidden, he practiced Judaism. I especially remember how during Yom Kippur, he went to only one synagogue that was later on closed. And we would go outside during Yom Kippur to check for first star to break our fast. His life's dream was to go to Israel. He and my mom immigrated in May 1967, 5 days before 6 days war. We visited them 11 years later, and he was very happy to see us in Israel. Unfortunately, he died a couple years later. I miss him a lot. That's it.
Thank you, Ed, for sharing that and, you know, bringing out that little detail of going outside the synagogue at the end of Yom Kippur. It's really, really nice way to kind of bring your dad and your family to life for us. So thank you. And we'll now continue with an El Male for Anna's mom. El Male Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei Ashchina B'Ma'alot Kedoshim Uterim Kezor HaKiyam Asirim Et Nishmat Aida Bat Moshe Shachal Le'olama Bavur Shenachnu Mitpalim Bad Haskarat Nishmata Began Eden Temenuchata Lachin bal rachamim yastir b'seter knafav l'olamim v'yitzor b'tzorachim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom hamishkava v'nomar Amen. Anna?
Yeah, I think over the years I said a lot about my mom and my dad, but the fact is that I was much, much closer to my father, and my mom was just always there, and I took a lot of it for granted. I didn't know that I will lose her so soon. She was only 54, and I was only 22, and I wish that I knew that, so I would learn from her more, that I will actually appreciate her more, and that she would meet my children, her grandchildren, which she never did. And 55 years later, I still miss her. That's all.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you both for sharing and for bringing your parents into our community this morning, and for taking the time to remember them and to keep your love for them alive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everybody.
All right, Joel, did you want to say something before we turn back to the text?
Sure. The people of Hamar, is there a name for their tribe?
I don't think so. I mean, I think of them in my head as Shem, just because that's kind of the most well-known, well-known name associated with them.
So I have some thoughts about their actions. Maybe it was a power thing, that they knew that they would be easily defeated by Jacob and his sons. But I'm struck by their interest in working together and people making such a sacrifice to go in that direction. Maybe he was such a strong dictator that they just had to do it, but there is the perspective that they wanted to live together.
Yeah, there is. And there's also the perspective of like following the passions of your leader kind of more or less blindly. And we'll continue to read through the text. It's one of these things, and I think this started even in the conversation we were having a little bit earlier with Mike. It's one of these things where you can read into the nuances of the text very closely both ways, right? Because it doesn't seem, from my reading, like I would guess that Jacob and his tribes could not overpower them, because then why would the sons resort to trickery if, they were really thinking about resorting to military violence? The more kind of honorable, for lack of a better term, perhaps, thing to do would just be to attack the camp and get their sister back. And there is kind of, you can read it, if you do a close reading, you'll see kind of the difference in between what Shem and Hamor say to Jacob and his sons and what they tell the other, what they tell their subordinates and what they tell their camp. Whereas like with, when they're talking to Jacob and their sons, they make it seem like it will be this great kind of mutually beneficial relationship, which I think is what, you're reading into a little bit more. But when they're talking to the other, to the rest of their camp or the rest of their tribe, they're basically saying, this is going to be great for us, right? Like, we're going to get their daughters, we're going to get their wealth. And so, there is this possible disconnect between what they're putting out as the benefits will be and what maybe, in its time, in whatever it meant to kind of try to merge two tribes or try to connect two tribes, what the reality might have been. So yeah, there's a lot to kind of dig in, even without going into like what the commentaries say, what the medieval rabbis say, just kind of giving a close reading to the text. There's a lot to be unpacked there. Yeah, Mike?
Just one brief thing. I will send you again the commentary or discussion from David Woods fellow that I get every week from he's in the synagogue in Atlanta. He's a fellow I knew and there too. But I guess the fact is the Torah is not condemning rape. The Torah is condemning that there was sex between two people from different, or out from an outside perspective, an outside group, not Jewish. But the other thing is that he refers to is the book and later the movie, Red Tent, which focuses on this story too. So I'll leave it at that. But there's, like you said, there's so many interpretations because we're just given little snippets of an event, and then you have to comment on it or figure out what it means.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what we are here for. Yeah, Anna, unmute yourself.
I just can't help but thinking that so many years ago and today, the law is like whatever you make out of it. And I think that Mike could make an excellent defense lawyer in any of those cases against rape. I just couldn't help it. Yes, I read the book, The Red Tent, and saw the movie. Mike is right. This story is very, very, very good covered over there. But, it was there, it is now. What you make out of it could go either way. Mike could be hired by any one of those people.
Thank you, Anna. And one of Mike's many careers is he is a lawyer. I don't think he ever worked as a courtroom defense lawyer, but maybe he's got stories that we don't know, right? And just in quick response to Bob's question, and then we'll finish off with this morning's Torah reading. They weren't Jewish in the sense of quite the understanding of Jewish that we have. They were kind of a proto-Jewish tribe, right? And probably the most significant tribal marker was circumcision. That it seems was the thing that distinguished them from other tribes. And we have kind of both from Abraham through Jacob, we have this idea of expanding their camps and expanding their numbers. And this would have been the way it seems like that would have happened, right? By asking people who are going to join the greater population to kind of circumcise themselves and commit themselves. All right, let's turn back to the tail end of this morning's Torah reading. We're on page 210 in the Eitz Chaim, chapter 34, verse 25, and we're going to go till about the middle of chapter 35. We're going till verse 15. Amen. Vayihi Bayom Hashlishi Biotam Koavim Vayikhu Shnei Bnei Yaakov Shimon v'Levi Achei Dina Ish Charbo Vayavo Ha'ir Betach Vayarguhu Kol Zachar Bet Chamor Bet Shechem Beno Hargu Lefi Charev Vayikhu et dinam mibeit Shechem vayitzeu bnei Yaakov va'u al hachalalim vayavozu ha'ir asher timu achotam et sonam vet bekaram vet chamorehem vet asher ba'ir vet asher v'sadeh lakachu vet kol chelam vet kol tapam vet neshehem shavu vayavozu Beit kol asher ba'bayit vayomer Yaakov el Shimon ve'Levi achartem oti v'havisheni beyoshev haaretz biknani uvaprizi v'ani metei mispar v'nesfu alai v'hikuni v'nishmadati ani uveiti vayomru hachazona yeaset achotenu Vayomer Elohim el Yaakov, kum ale Beitel v'shev sham, ve'aseh sham mizbeach la'el hanira elecha, v'varchacha mipnei Esav achicha. Vayomer Yaakov el Beito ve'el kol asher imo ha'asiru, et Elohei hanechar asher b'tochechem. Vehi taharu v'hachalifu simlotechem v'nakuma v'na'ale beit el v'esesham mizbeach la'el ha'oneoti biyom tzarati v'yihi imadi b'derech asher halachti Vayitnu el Yaakov et kol Elohei hanechar asher biadam vetanizamim asher boznehem vayitmon otam Yaakov tachat ha'ela asher im Shechem vayisa'u vayhi chitat Elohim el ha'arim asher svivotehem velo radfu acharei b'nei Yaakov Vayavo Yaakov Luza Asher be'eret Canaan Hi Beit El Hu v'cholam Asher imo Vayiven Sham Yizbeach Vayikra L'makom El Beit El Kisham Niglu Elav HaElohim Bevarcho Mipnei Achiv Vatamot Devorah Meineket Rivka Vatika Ver Mitachat Leveit El Tachat Ha'alon Vayikra Shmo Alon Bechutz Vayira Elohim El Yaakov Od Bevo'o Mipadan Aram Vayavarech Oto Vayomer Lo Elohim Shimcha Yaakov Lo Yikare Shimcha Od Yaakov Ki Im Yisrael Yeh Shemecha Vayikra Shmo Yisrael Vayomer Lo Elohim Ani El Shaddai Perei Urvei Goy Ukahal Goyim Yemimeka Umelachim Mechaletzecha Yetzeu V'et haaretz Asher natati L'Avraham L'Yitzchak Lecha etenena U'zarcha acharecha eten et haaretz Vayal me'alav Elohim B'makom Asher diber ito Vayatzev Yaakov matzeva B'makom Asher diber oto matzev et aven Vayasech aleha nesech Vayitzok aleha shamen Vayikra Yaakov et shem hamakom Asher diber ito sham Elohim Beit El. And that's where we will pause with our Genesis story for this morning. I will now, Bruce, before we turn it over, and Sharon.
I was just wondering about this nurse. Why did people like Rebecca have nurses in those days?
So we'll come back to the topic of, so what Bruce is highlighting and what we are going to come back to is verse 8 in chapter 35. Devorah, Rebecca's nurse, died and was buried under the oak below Beit El, so it was named Alon Bachut. And I mean, I think they had nurse, I don't know exactly what the term nurse, I mean, Meineket in like the grand scheme of biblical kind of servants is like a nursemaid, like someone who, I think helps raise the children, specifically might help breastfeed the children. I think that's what, when we get to the Moshe story, I think that's what Pharaoh's daughter kind of contracts when Moshe winds up, at her back door, and she needs someone to feed the child. So that's what I think it's referring to. And I think generally, those women become kind of household, a little bit of a catch-all, like mother's helper, nursemaid, help raise the kids, help nanny, help. I imagine it's a little bit of everything that kind of falls into that category of assistance there. Is that, yeah, and we'll talk about what's going on with that verse a little bit more after the Haftarah, because it does stand out for a couple reasons. Sharon, were you gonna?
I was going to ask about exactly the same verse, but my question was more, and I guess we're going to get into this. It just seems so odd that this woman is mentioned. I don't remember if we even really have much about Rivka's death, or Leah's for that matter, who are much more central to things. But I mean, all of a sudden we just hear about a nursemaid, and so yeah, we're going to go back to that. But in the larger context, it also just is always strange to me which which people are picked out and which stay in the background and in what ways. I mean, especially with the women, but it's true with the men here and there also, like who gets to walk onto center stage and who gets bit parts. And sometimes it's surprising. It just puzzles me.
Well, I am very glad I prepared the comments that I did, because I know that I'm ready to answer at least like, or address at least like 2 or 3 facets of the question you just asked. So, you know, we can come back after my Dvar Torah and you can let me know what's still lingering for you. And actually, Sharon, I'm going to ask you to re-unmute yourself so that you can take us into the healing service, please.
Okay. We don't put the words up anymore, eh? Okay.
No, let's just look at each other and sing.
So let's just look at each other and join in if you can and want to. Mishebeinu Makor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu Makor habracha la'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Misheberach avotenu ve'imotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, ve'Yaakov, Moshe ve'Aharon, David u'Shlomo, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, ve'Leah, Bilhah ve'Zilpah, u'Yivarech ve'Yirafeh et hacholim, b'nei Avraham ve'Sarah, b'nei Adam ve'Chava. May God, who blessed our ancestors, bless and heal all those in need of it now. And as always, we just have very few in the big scheme of things names that we know of who are in need of healing now. And we'll start with the weekly list and then ask people to add whatever names they would like to. Shoshana bat Pinchas V'Chana, Meir ben Fega v'Aaron Yitzchak, Dennis McNeely, Jess Kramer, Alexis Watson, Joel Gordon, May Dog, Bob Jelly, Bruce Mallory, Alan Mann, Barbara Dowd, John O'Brien, Jacques Mansey, Carol Barker, Catherine Doloff, Ken Bosey, Chana Bat Rivka, Lorraine Daniluk, Denise Stelmack, Yitzchak Ben Yisrael, Madeline Blake, Rachel Barcelona, Corey Brown, Kara Smoley, Fotios Rallis, Chana Esther Bat Ayala Hadar. And if anyone who has a name would indicate that you do now, Alex can unmute you one by one.
Barry Salloway.
My dad, Bill Salloway.
Bob Mandel, you want to unmute yourself? Bob, you got on mute.
There we go. Salima Jones Daly, Kurt Curtis, Daniel Salinas, Carol Freeband.
Mom?
Devorah Sosana Bat Matilda.
Mike?
Okay, Dina Bracha Bat Miriam and Bart Gerald.
Barry Pastor?
Bela Adela, Bas Barrelay, Fred Camaro, Josh Haskett.
Jani?
My sister recovering from COVID, Esther Bat Barucha.
Patty, if you want to unmute yourself.
Jeff Strauss and Karen Stern's mother. I don't know her mother's name. I found out her mother's really sick.
Thanks. Anyone else whose hand I missed? Well, let's just take another minute. You know, obviously we come together as a community on Saturday morning, and it can really serve over the last couple months as such a beautiful kind of relief and moment where we step back from everything that's going on in the greater world around us. But let's really take one more minute to focus in on all the things that are going on in the world around us and how much we need healing in our country and in our world. Sharon, whenever you're ready.
בעבור שאנחנו מתפללים בעבורם, בשחר זה הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם, להחלימם ולרפאותם, ולהחזיקם ולהחיותם, וישלח להם מהרה רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף. שבת היא מלזעוק רפואה קרובה לבוא, השתה בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ונאמר אמן. And before we close the healing service, I just want to mention and acknowledge that I feel like there's been some rekindling of a little more hope recently, that let's not forget about that too as we balance the distress and the wishes for healing, that we have hopes about vaccines, we have hopes about a new sane administration. And so there's hope along with all the rest of it, and neither one denies the other or nullifies the other.
Back to discussions about light and dark, right? I mean,
right.
Always trying to keep balance and see two sides of both sides of what's going on around us. So, thank you, Sharon. I'm going to hand it over to Judy Matthews. There's a couple reasons I want to visit this morning's Haftarah. It comes from the book of Obadiah, and it's actually the whole book. So it's just one chapter, but you know, how often do we get to read through an entire book of Tanakh in one sitting? So that's an opportunity in its own right. And also this week really marks, even though we didn't get into it in our cycle of the triennial, this week marks kind of the last big conflict between Jacob and Esau, and the Haftorah revisits this from a little bit more of a historical perspective, from what becomes the progeny of Jacob and the progeny of Esau, between the Israelites and the Edomites, and so just looking at this from the historical perspective, from the prophetic perspective, I think is it's worth visiting one more time before we kind of move on to Joseph and his brothers. So if you have a Chumash, it's on page 222 in the Eitz Chaim, and I will turn it over to Mom, and I'll put it up on the screen when she's done with the brachot.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar b'nviim tovim, v'ratza b'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai, abocher b'Torah, u'Moshe avdo, u'Yisrael amo, u'b'nviei ha'emet b'tzedek. Chazon Ovadia Ko Amar Adonai Elohim L'Adam Shemua shamanu me'et Adonai v'tzir bagoyim shulach kumu v'nakuma aleha lamelchama hine katon netaticha bagoyim bazui ata me'od zidon libcha Hishiecha, Shochnei, V'chagvei Sela, Mirom Shivto, Omer Bilibo, Miorideni Aretz, Imtag Bi HaKanesher, Ben Kochavim, Sim Kinecha, Misham Oritcha, Neum Adonai, Im ganavim ba'ulecha, im shodidei laila, ech nidmeita, alo yiknevu dayam, im botrim ba'ulach, halo yashiru oleilo, ech nechbesu esav, niv'u matpunav, atagvul, Shilchucha kol anshe vritecha hishieucha yachlu lecha anshe shlomecha lachmecha yasimu mazor tachtecha ein tfuna bo halo bayom hahunu Adonai V'ha'avadati chachamim meyadom utmuna mehar esav v'chatu giborecha teman leman yikarei ish mehar esav mikatel mechamam achicha Yaakov techazcha vusha V'nechrata le'olam b'yom amdecha minaged b'yom shivot zarim chelo v'necharim ba'u she'arav bal Yerushalayim yadu goral gamata ke'achat mehem V'al terev yom achicha b'yom nochro, ve'al tizmach livnei Yehuda b'yom avdam, ve'al tagdel picha b'yom tzara, al tavo b'sharami b'yom edam, al tereh gamata, v'rato b'yom edo. V'al tishnalcha b'chelo bayom edo. V'al tamod al haperek lehachrit et leitav. V'al tazger siridav b'yom tzara. Ki karov yom Adonai al kol hagoyim. Kasher asita ye'aseh lach gemulcha. Yashuv b'roshecha ki kasher shtitem al har kochi yishtu chol hagoyim tamid v'shatu v'la'u v'hayu kilo hayu v'har tzion tiyef leita v'haya kodesh V'yarshu beit Yaakov et morashehem v'haya beit Yaakov esh uveit Yosef lehava uveit Esav likash v'dalko vahem ba'achalu lo yesarid Leveit Esav ki Adonai diber v'yarshu hanegev et haresav v'hashvela et pelishtim v'yarshu et tzedei Ephraim v'et tzedei Shomron ובנימין את הגלעד, וגלות החל הזה לבני ישראל, אשר כנענים עד צרפת, וגלות ירושלים אשר בספרד, ירשו את ערי הנגב, ועלו מושיעים בהר ציון, לשפוט את הר עשיו, והייתה לאדוני המלוכה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, היה הנאמן האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ונאמנים דבריך, ודבר אחד מדבריך אחור לא ישוב ריקם. כי אל מלך נאמן ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הנאמן בכל דבריו. רחם על ציון כי בית חיינו, ולעלובת נפש תושיע במהרה בימינו. ברוך אתה אדוני, משמח ציון בבניה. שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו באליהו הנביא עבדך, ובמלכות בית דוד משיחך, במהרה יבוא ויגל ליבנו. על כיסאו לא ישב זר, ולא ינחלו אנוכי את כבודו. כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לו, שלא יכבה נרו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני,
שמו,
מגן דוד.
אמן.
על התורה ועל עבודה ועל נביאים ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני,
שמו,
וקדש השבת.
amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Mom. Yasher Koach. And also, a belated Mazel Tov to Bob Mandel, who I guess is celebrating the anniversary of his own bar mitzvah this morning. I hope you got something new from hearing the Haftarah again and being able to read in English as you said you were. The one verse I'll point out in English before we move on is, verse 18. The house of Jacob shall be fire. If any of you, want to go blow the minds of your kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews, I'm pretty sure, and Mac would know this better than I am, that calling something fire is very much in these days. Like if you see, one of your friends and you like their shirt, you can tell them that shirt is fire. So if you really want to, go blow some millennial's mind, let them know that goes all the way back to the times of Ovadia. And who knows, maybe we'll make the Old Testament cool again. So that's just a little random note and a joke. But yeah, let's revisit both the story of Dinah and the appearance, or at least the mention of this kind of mysterious nursemaid, handmaid, named Devorah, and how both of these women play into our text this morning. The story of the abduction and rape of Dinah is unsettling and disturbing, as we've already talked about. And I'm not just referring to the abhorrent actions of Shem, but also of Dinah's treatment by the text. Dinah is notable for being named as Jacob's daughter as part of the greater Jacob narrative, but she really isn't distinguished in any other notable way. In fact, in contrast to her 12 brothers, we are not even told why she receives the name Dinah. What is the significance to her mother or her family? And as we read throughout the story in this morning's Parsha, she's referred to as Leah's daughter, she's referred to as Jacob's daughter, She's Shimon and Levi's sister. She never quite seems to get her own identity. And seemingly, in her attempt to go out and find herself, to go visit the daughters of the land, which is how this morning's passage starts, tragedy strikes. And so what we perhaps know most famously about Dinah is that she never says a word. There's another famously mysterious female character mentioned in this morning's reading. In chapter 35, verse 8, we read, Vatamot Devorah meineket Rivka vatikaver mitachat levet el tachat ha'elon vayikra shmo Alon Bachut. Devorah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak below Beit El, so it was called Alon Bachut, which literally means the oak of tears. This passage is striking for a number of reasons, some of which you have all begun to point out this morning. The text rarely introduces by name characters who aren't core to the narrative. It is even more exceedingly rare when one of these characters is a woman. In fact, compare this with the verse in Genesis 24:59, where Devorah is introduced. Vayishalchu et Rivka achotam ve'et menikta ve'et Eved Avraham ve'et anashav. So they sent off their sister Rebekah and her nurse, along with Abraham's servant and his men. When Rebekah is initially leaving her parents' house, she brings this nurse, who we assume is Devorah, along. But even when they set out on their journey together, Devorah is not mentioned by name. She's just left as an anonymous nurse. And it's just really weird that we're giving no context for this woman's life or her death, or why the occasion of her death brings so much sadness or causes so much sadness. And even ultimately, what was she doing with Jacob's camp in the first place, if she was Rebekah's handmaid or nursemaid? And what is perhaps the strangest part of this entire story is that what we refer to as kind of the classical sources and the classical commentators and the midrashim and the medieval rabbis, they don't really seem to care. And they really don't have very much to say about this, which for a group of men who, writes books about a misplaced letter, to come upon a whole verse like this that just seems so mysterious and get almost nothing, it certainly boggles my mind a little bit. You would think that this passage would open their eyes, inspire them to write something, that a tradition would be handed down about this woman. But really, we get almost nothing. The most widely accepted midrashic explanation is that her death is kind of tied to Rebekah's death. As Sharon pointed out, we really don't hear very much about Rebekah's death, certainly not in the moment. We'll get it a couple chapters later, kind of again mentioned in passing. And the reason they interpret it that Rebekah's death this way is that Rebekah kind of dies a little bit alone and under a cloud of shame, right? Like she dies when Jacob is on the road. Esau hates her for, for being part of tricking him out of his birthright. And Isaac is old and blind and feeble. And so she kind of dies with a little bit of anonymity, but the text still wants to honor her. So they honor her by mentioning the death of her handmaid. And I would say that at best, it's a stretch. I can't tell if you're all rolling your eyes or not, but I wouldn't blame you if you were. And like I said, there really isn't a lot in the more kind of classical sources about this. So instead, I'm going to turn us to modern commentary. And I'm going to draw from this book, which maybe you can see up in my screen, even if the letters are backwards. It's called The 5 Books of Miriam, a woman's commentary on the Torah. And it's written by Dr. Ellen Frankel. And what she does in this book is she kind of very cohesively combines text and midrash and folktales and her own writing to relate the experience of the Torah from the perspective of the women in Tanakh. And so here she's writing from Rebecca's voice that Devorah's death is not only noted, but even commemorated with a living memorial, shows just how beloved she was to our family. Her service spanned 80 years, the 20 years of my barrenness, the 40 years when both of my twins were at home, and the 20 long years of Jacob's exile. With her death, we all had plenty of reason to mourn. I think this interpretation serves as a gentle reminder that if we want to be able to relate to the patriarchs and matriarchs as human beings and relate to their humanity, we can't look past the human experience, the myriads of supporting actors who flit around in the background, dutifully and loyally fulfilling their own destinies. Not every hero in the Torah needs to have wrestled with God or lived in great strife, but sometimes the actual model for a life well lived can be found in the passing mention of a background character, or in the death of someone like Devorah. Which brings me back to the story of Dinah. I would argue, and I think we've already kind of begun to discuss this amongst ourselves this morning, that it is incumbent upon us as readers and studiers and hopefully lovers of Torah to work to go back and fill in the gaps that we see, the gaps that we find in the text. To remember that Dinah spoke, that she was named Dinah for a reason, that she wasn't just a daughter or a sister, but a woman and a person in her own right, with a story all her own. Judaism, unfortunately, has thousands of years of patriarchal history for us to deal with. And we can't totally rewrite that. And I also don't think we're ready to kind of toss all of that history and that knowledge aside. But what we can do, and what we can do as individuals, and what we can do as a community, is work to find ourselves in the text and see and develop the characters and people who were unseen, and to really figure out where we can find the representation, where we can find the people who speak more to us. And maybe sometimes that's going to come in Devorah, who we know nothing about, rather than Jacob or Leah or Rachel or Bilhah or Zilpah. Also characters that we probably at the end of the day don't know nothing about. And one other kind of note, and I think as you all know at this point, I like when I can to tie in baseball references especially. I think that just speaks to my upbringing. But recently, for any of you who've been following this, the Florida Marlins, or the Miami Marlins, I don't even know which one they are these days, they hired the first female general manager in really the history of all major American sports. Her name is Elaine Ning, I think. And one of the podcasts I was listening to about this basically said that baseball and sports in general needs to be ready to kind of deal with a doubling of their talent pool, right? There's 50% of the population that has been shut out of management, of general management, of decision-making, of idea generation. And that pool has always been wider, and we're just finally starting to realize how much more there is to call upon. And I think that's true for us in our Jewish studies too. I think we've made great strides with incorporating the voices of women, incorporating the voices and ideas of groups that aren't classically listened to or heard. But really, we are able to kind of expand our knowledge base so much with all that Judaism is known for writing books and having expansive libraries and generating ideas, that's really for the last thousands of years been only half of what's out there. And I hope that we are ready to kind of open our minds and open our eyes to that expansiveness that is available to us in the 21st century. I had a moment last week where I realized that we had 2 women who were over 90 on our Zoom call. And that made me think, doing a little bit of kind of quick mental math. And as I look at the screen right now and I see, all our smiling faces and all our smiling boxes, just between us right now, we have collectively probably close to, if not over 1,000 years of knowledge and life experience and community building, and going back to struggling and wrestling with text, with ideas, with Judaism, with Jewish history to call on. And so, continuing to move that forward and continuing to make sure we're incorporating new voices and learning about new characters and filling in the gaps that when we read them, we realize, holy cow, why has nobody said this? Why has nobody noticed this before? I hope that's something we're really able to call on each other and to call on those centuries worth of history that are just with us every Shabbos morning to really continue moving these questions forward. So Sharon, I hope I started to answer some of your questions about Devorah and who she was. We are running a little bit long, but if anyone has any thoughts or further questions or follow-up, we can certainly take a couple minutes. Yeah, Hank, is that a hand or just a wave high? You got to unmute yourself, and then we're ready to hear you.
Okay. Okay. So I think there's a relationship between Deborah and the death of Rachel that I just want to point out. Because if Deborah was around, Rachel might not have died.
Oh, that's interesting, right? That she sent her kind of most closest caregiver and companion out to go check on her beloved son Jacob, and that Rachel might not have died.
That's correct.
Interesting. Yeah. Because pretty much in the next passage immediately after the death of Devorah is the birth of Benjamin and Rachel's death in childbirth. And so, yeah, putting together those dots and seeing kind of the all-important role that someone who we might think of just like a background helper in really kind of preserving life and preserving, health and safety and all that, how important that can be. Is that where you're going?
That's exactly right.
Huh. That's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, and especially, when you think of her as Rebecca's handmaid and you go back to the text of Rebecca having such a difficult pregnancy with her twins, right? And struggle, the text really does lay out her struggle. And so, yeah, thinking about that and the passage that immediately comes after it, that's a beautiful thought. Thank you. Thank you so much, Hank, for putting that in. Yeah, Mike.
I put the question in the chat because it occurred to me. I didn't remember that Devorah or Deborah was referenced as a name in the Torah. And I'm thinking then there's the prophet, and it occurs to me the name is recycled, which is to me a little bit unusual because I don't remember any other recycled names. But so I thought maybe there's a connection. Is there anything in the Talmud or anywhere in Jewish text that makes a connection?
I think there are. I didn't dive too deeply into this, but I think I saw in passing that possibly like this place where she's buried, this what was it?
Terebinth.
This Alon Bechut, I think that is someplace that is also associated with Devorah the prophetess, that might be kind of where the tree that she sits under when she comes into the story. So I think it is tied in, I think there are connections made, and I can dig a little bit deeper into that as well. All right. Well, I think I'm going to close the arc and we'll move towards the end of services. And as I often say, doesn't need to be the end of the conversation just because we're moving towards the end of services and because I'm done talking. I invite you all to, keep thinking about it. And if anything pops into your head after we say Kiddush or at any other moment, even if it's Wednesday at 2 p.m., feel free to reach out and let me know. So we will continue with the full Kaddish. I invite anyone who would like to come off mute and respond to the words of the Kaddish. Yikadal v'ikadash me'rabah.
Amen.
Ve'alma divrach yirtei ve'amlich malchutei b'chaychon v'yamachon u'chayit l'chol Beit Yisrael b'agala v'zman kariv v'meru.
Amen. Eishnei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Le'olam
Barach v'shtabach v'bar v'truam v'naseh v'tadar v'koy v'tolal shmei d'kudesha Elam mikol berchata v'shirata tushpachata v'nechmata damiran be'alma v'meru.
Amen.
Yitkabel tzonadon d'chol Beit Yisrael kadam lu'am d'vishmaya v'meru.
Amen.
Yishlam rab min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'alko Yisrael v'meru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'alko Yisrael v'alko Yisrael tevel v'meru.
Amen.
We'll come together for the Aleinu. If you would like, please rise. I will put it up on the screen.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adam hakol ha'tet kedula l'yoser breshit shelo asanu kikrei haratzot v'lo samanu k'mishpachos ha'adama shelo sam helkeinu kahem v'goraleinu k'chol
Anachnu korim
u'mishtachavim
modim
Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu noten shemayim v'yosed haaretz u'Moshe v'karo b'shamayim mima'al u'shchinato
V'gavei meromim hu Eloheinu einod Emet malkeinu efesulato kakatuv b'torato v'yadatayom v'hashivota elevavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim v'shamayim ima'al v'al haaretz mitachat einod kakatuv v'toratecha Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed v'nemar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad Ushemo echad. In just a moment, we'll continue with Mourner's Kaddish. This week, Congregation Ahavas Achim marks the Yortzeitin of Fanny Asen, Ida Bilatz-Sorkovsky, Israel Shanker, Terry Sales, Michael Wexler, and Gladys Hymanson. May all their memories be a blessing. If you would like to unmute yourself and join me in the Kaddish, please do so now. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'alma divrach yirutei ve'amlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru. Amen.
Yehi Shmei Mevorach Le'olam Olamei.
Barach v'shtabach v'tramam v'naseh
Itadar v'talei v'talal shmei d'kudusha
le'elam
Imol
imol
mirchata
mirchata
v'shivata
v'shivata
Tushbata v'nechmata
damiran
damiran
be'alma
v'alma
v'imru.
v'imru.
Amen.
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 Yehei Shlama Rabba Nu Shemaya Chaim Aleinu Val Kol Yisrael. Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom B'romav Atu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Val Kol Yisrael Val Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Anyone who is standing may be seated. I'm going to put us all back on mute. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming together this morning and for joining us for our davening. Anna and Ed, as I see you guys there and read, each of one of your parents' names, I think Mac talks a lot about how she's like a little bit remiss that I don't have a more Jewish last name. I think she wishes that, I was like a Goldberg or a Goldstein or something like that. And, so I think of like Schenker as a last name, and then I think of Bilatsarkovsky as a last name. And I wonder, how much better my Russian pronunciation would be if you guys were the Bilatsarkovskys instead of the Schenkers. But it's good to see you all and good to have you joining us.
Thank you.
Ed, you want to pronounce it better for me? I see you have yourself unmuted. Anna, tell me how it's supposed to be said.
It is correct. Thank you. But I will tell you a quick, funny story. I was at the hospital once and registering, and she asked about my maiden name. By the time I spelled half of it, she said, "Aren't you glad you got married?"
Yeah, thank you.
You know what Bilatsarkovsky means? It's actually white church. Strange. But it was very Jewish name. There are a lot of Jews were named that way. Don't ask me why.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing the history. And of course, Yasher Koach to everyone who got themselves off mute and participated in our services this morning. Always good to hear voices, and I'm always happy to incorporate more voices. If you want to lead something or sing something, just let me know. Shoot me an email during the week. This week, of course, we begin Hanukkah. So we have a lot going on this week and over the next couple weeks. First of all, not Hanukkah related, but tomorrow at 3, we'll be joined by Barbara Mulcahy Weiner, who is a friend of the congregation. She recently self-published a children's book, and she wants to kind of talk about the experience and talk about her process and her writing a little bit and share that with us. So that's tomorrow at 3. Tuesday night, we of course have our adult ed, and then Thursday morning, we'll have our weekday morning minyan, and then Thursday night, Hanukkah begins. We're going to be doing everything on Zoom. That was the decision of the ritual committee and the reopening committee. The menorah will be up in Market Square if you want to go hang out by the menorah or, visit it or just kind of remember that we do have a Jewish presence in this town. It is up thanks to help from Ron Rutchick, but we're not going to be doing large gatherings out there this year for obvious reasons. And I just encourage you all to read both the bulletin and to go back in your inbox to see everything that is happening over Hanukkah at CAA. The two things I will actually highlight will be taking place next Sunday, which is Sunday morning from 11 to 1. We're going to be doing a food drive. The Schurz Latham family is going to be cooking latkes. So if you stop by the shul from 11 to 1 and drop off something for the food and toiletry drive, you can walk away with a plate of warm latkes, which sounds like a great deal to me. And then Sunday evening, we have the New England Independent Authors Collective. I might have switched around some of the letters. They gave a talk to us back in June. It's a group of Jewish writers from the North Shore talking about kind of how, last time they talked about how their Jewish experience influences their art. This time they'll be talking a little bit more about kind of the experience of the holidays. And I encourage, that's the only Hanukkah event that requires pre-registration. So check out the e-blast for that. And of course, last thing I'll say, because we are running long, next Shabbos is Leo Cordingley's bar mitzvah. And so I will be upstairs and we will be using a different link. So if you'd like to join us next Shabbos, make sure you use the correct link, which will be posted in this week's e-blast and go out again probably Wednesday or Thursday. Any other announcements, things you want the community to know? Great, then let's sing Tikva and move on to Kiddush. And oh yeah, Mike, you're muted.
Yeah, I noted Jerry Litkovsky wasn't here, and he wasn't on Thursday where he usually is on.
Yeah, I know.
I assume he's okay. I haven't heard anything, or
Yeah, we saw him Tuesday at the ritual committee meeting. I also, I didn't make much of him not coming on Thursday, but it's definitely unusual for him.
yeah.
Granted, everyone is allowed to take a Shabbos off, besides more or less me, if you want a Shabbos off. But I will try to remember to check in with him either Motzei Shabbos or tomorrow morning.
Thank.
Yeah, Barry.
There's also a menorah in downtown Amesbury.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. The menorah that Jerry's son, I think, built is in outside the library in the gazebo in Amesbury, or will be. Great. So let's move on to Hatikva and then Kiddush. Kol balecha penima nefesh Yehudi homiyah ulefate Mizrach ayin letzion Sophia Odo hatikvateinu hatikva mashnot alpayim liyotam chofshi be'artzenu eretz Zion Yerushalayim liyotam chofshi be'artzenu eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti leolam veshamru
b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit
Yishesh yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim v'et ha'aretz veshamru
Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat
et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Vayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Al kein beracham na'etom hashvat v'yigadshehu sabri Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shachol niyeh b'dvoro.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Good to see you again, Patty.
Hardly ever have it.
Patty, it's very nice to see you again.
It is. Yes, glad you came back.
I really enjoy the services so much, and I miss the services a lot.
Well, we
It's
miss
great you
you,
can
so
be
it's
with us.
good when you're here.
Great, thank you. It's nice to be missed.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah, we have to leave, guys.
feel like
We
I'm
need to
gonna-
wish
Good
our
Shabbos.
granddaughter
Stay
happy
warm.
birthday.
Stay warm.